Hey everyone, it's Mark and Julie from RV Love. Today's video is going to be about surviving the crazy of Quartzite.
Stay tuned. Hey everyone, well, you've probably been hearing a lot about Quartzsite, Arizona. It seems that just about every RVer has been there or is going there or has been sharing videos or social media posts from there. And a lot of you, if you haven't been here, might be wondering what it's all about. This is our, I think, 4th visit to Quartzsite now, and twice alone, camping, just the two of us in the Serenity, and twice with a big group and camping as part of one of the many RVing events that happens here at this time of year. And literally thousands upon thousands, probably tens of thousands of RVers converge on this little town that typically only has a population of about 4,000 year round. And so it literally does get crazy, because if you come in the last 2 weeks of January, which coincides with the big tent and the RV shows, that is the peak time for Quartzite.
You might remember we did a video about Quartzite last year, which gives a good understanding of what the experience has been for us. But this year we thought it'd be really fun to put together a video with some opinions of a few other folks and give you some tips on surviving the crazy of Quartzite.
Hi, I'm Stacy.
And I'm Gary.
And we are Pauhana Travels. And we have actually spent time outside of the big tent a month prior, when Quartzite is really small and quiet and quaint.
Not all the RVers are there clogging up the town yet.
Yeah, and then we've also been there in January for the big tent show, where it is crazy.
We've been to Quartzite during 2 tent shows, this year and the previous year. And when you're there with that big of a draw, it's amazing how many people end up in this small area.
And for your resources, one thing that we've learned is so many people can really clog up the main streets, because there's really only 2 roads that people use. So for our grocery shopping, to save some money, we will either go north to Parker, which is about 30-minute drive, or we'll go to Blythe, which will actually take us about 40 minutes, just because we have to drive through town.
Yep. They're both Parker and Blythe have great resources on grocery stores and fuel and propane and everything else you may need. Yes, if you have solar on your roof, that's going to give you an advantage. You're not running a generator as much. And another thing you might want to do is maybe looking at bringing a water bladder with you, so you don't have to move your RV to go get water. You can bring the water to your RV in your towed vehicle.
And then when it comes time to get rid of that wastewater, having a Blue Boy on board, which is a portable honey bucket, you can then easily take your towed vehicle into town, use the RV pit stop, dump off your waste, and it's super easy. You don't have to tear down camp to go take care of your tanks.
When you get to Quartzsite, it's going to be a crazy madhouse, no matter where you are. Even if you're in LTVAs, if you're in Dome Rock or Plomosum Road, wherever you end up, it's going to be very busy, and you have to know that.
And that's in the middle of January.
In the middle of January. In December, and then in February, it lightens up a lot, and it's a lot easier to get around. But when you're down there in town, in the thick of things, it's kind of fun just to watch people.
Yeah.
People watching is always a lot of fun, and sometimes hilarious.
You gotta watch your heels, because a lot of people have dog strollers, and they don't want to leave their dogs in their rigs, so they buy these strollers, like a baby stroller, and stroll them around town or the big tent. So,
and sometimes you get run over a little bit, but it's part of the experience. There's a ton of stuff going on. There's not just the big RV tent. There's the whole Tyson Wells area that's like a huge swap meet that goes on for weeks. All sorts of rocks and gems, and almost anything you want you can find there. So
anything RV related, you can find.
Even not RV related. It's just kind of a cool experience. So go there with an open mind, knowing there's going to be a lot of people, and you're still going to have a great time.
I'm John Hebert from Hebert's Travels. We just went to Quartzsite last week. It was our first time ever there, and there's a couple things I learned. Number one, you do not need to stock up like it's the apocalypse. You are 15 minutes from the town of Quartzsite. You can go back in for food and for water, for fuel. So you don't need to bring 20 gallons of fuel for your generator. You can just go back in town and fill up your 2-gallon tank every couple of days. It's not that big of a deal. We went with the Escapers Convergence. Few hundred rigs, few hundred people, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But if you are an introvert and you go with a group, don't park right in the middle, because that's party town. that's where everyone comes to converge in the middle, and they have big meetings and bonfires, and it's a lot of fun. But if you've got kids, or you want to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, or you need real quiet to sleep, park on the outside, and it's not that big of a deal. You park a 5-minute drive away, and you're away from all the hustle and bustle from the center. But if being in the middle of the action is your thing, park in the center, have a fun time. It's the great thing with Quartzsite is you can make it whatever you want. You can park an hour away from the city and see nobody if that's what you want, or you can park 15 minutes from town where most of the BLM land boondocking happens, most of the convergences happen, and be around a lot of people. And we spent a lot of nights around campfires meeting a lot of other RVers and learned a ton about RVing, because we're fairly new. We've only been doing it for a year and a half. Go there with an open mind and ready to meet people, because there is so much knowledge and so many friendly people that our fridge broke, and we had 10 different people trying to help us figure out how to fix it, what was going wrong with it. So it was a lot of fun meeting all the people, and we eventually did move from the center to the outskirts, because we didn't want to tell people to stop partying and having fun. So we moved a little and had quieter nights. And don't be afraid to pack your rig up and move someplace else if you want to. It's not an RV park. You can pick up and leave and move 10 feet or a mile if you want, whenever you want. So if you go to Quartzsite, make it your experience.
Hi, we're Lisa and Dan from Always on Liberty, and we're here to talk a little bit about what our Quartzsite experience last year compared to this year.
We've been to Quartzsite 3 times, twice for the RV rally and 1 time before the rally, and one thing we learned is we need to manage our expectations. Pre-rally or post-rally, or pre or post big event, the place is very, very quiet. It's nice and peaceful. Last year we went in about a week early. We stayed a few days, then we traveled down to Yuma, came back for the big RV show itself, and there was quite a bit of difference as far as amount of traffic and people and things like that. Weather kind of prohibited some of the partying last year. This year we'll let Lisa tell you a little bit about this year.
This year our Quartzsite experience was a little bit different from last year, because Dan said the weather was prohibitive last year, but this year the temperatures were awesome, and we were a little closer to a big group that we were kind of celebrating with, but we found ourselves a little too involved. And we're kind of in the middle between introvert, extrovert. We're not, we're just in the middle. And after a few days, it kind of got a little too busy and overwhelming, a little overstimulating. So if you're going to go to Quartzsite, our recommendation is, feel it out, know your own personality and how you're going to fit in. If you are a little leery about crowds, we recommend park a little bit out. But if you like to be in the center of all the good stuff and the celebrations, why, go for it and have lots of fun. It's going to be loud, it's going to be a little chaotic, but it is a lot of fun, and you can enjoy your Quartzsite experience.
There you have it. Manage your expectations at Quartzsite. You can be as involved as you'd like to be, or as disengaged as you'd like to be. It's up to you.
Hi, I'm Audrey.
And I'm Shane.
And we are with Audrey Callahan Music.
Yeah, so if you're somebody who isn't necessarily into going to the RV shows and walking around trying to buy stuff all day and the normal things that you hear about Quartzsite. For example, I myself am big into crystals and am starting a small business selling some things like that. So one of my main reasons to go was to go to the gem and mineral shows that were spread all throughout. It's actually like the second largest next to the Tucson show. And so because all of that's there every year, there's a nonprofit organization called the Quartzsite Improvement Association. That association does so many things. It costs $20 to join, and in order to take the classes and to engage and use all their equipment for all these things, it's dollars at a time. So I myself would purchase crystals in town, or they even provided some, and they teach you how to use the lapidary equipment. There's silversmithing, leather working, knife making.
Jewelry making.
There's field trips where everyone gathers up and they take you into the hillsides, and you actually go rock hounding for your own crystals there locally. Jewelry making, wire wrapping, there's all kinds of stuff. So if you're looking for something to do other than the obvious stuff, I really recommend that. In fact, that's what I did myself. It was a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.
If you're coming to Quartzsite outside of the main window of the RV show or the major gem show, the crowds are going to be substantially smaller and there's going to be a lot of space for everybody. But if you come during one of those big events, some of the main areas for camping can get really tight. There's going to be some areas that are almost rival some of the tighter campgrounds when you're actually out boondocking in the desert.
Right, so you might see photos where you see people parked alone and they've just got a backdrop of mountains, and that gets a little tougher to find in the second half of January. They certainly still can be found, but you probably need to go a little further out and away from town. Basically, the further you get away from town and where the big tent and all of the action is, the quieter it's going to get. But really, at that time of year, it does still stay pretty bustling around about that whole time. But
you know, and a lot of people, when you see them talking about Quartzsite, predominantly it's going to be boondocking, because when you try and bring tens of thousands of RVs into an area and you have lots of open space, then a lot of people are going to be boondocking. But there are campgrounds in Quartzsite, and there's also campgrounds in neighboring towns like Siloam and Blythe and Parker. Those other cities that are maybe a half-hour drive away might have some better accessibility for campgrounds if you're not comfortable boondocking but still want to see some of the Quartzsite experience.
so one of the tips we would say is if you want to experience Quartzsite without the crazy, go outside of the crazy time. So go before the middle of January or come and visit after the big show has left at the end of January. The first time we visited Quartzsite was actually in February 2015, and it was really quiet. There was still a number of boondockers around, but there was plenty of space. The main street was practically dead, and so it was a really vastly different experience to what we've had these last two times when we've been here at the peak. And I think if it is your first time coming to Quartzsite, unless you are somebody that really is comfortable and wants to camp alone, you can certainly do that very easily. But I think it is great coming here with a group for your first time, because it helps you get familiar with the area. A lot of people are really great for helping out with any problems or troubleshooting issues with your RV. Lots of great learning for people that are first-time boondocks. This is a great place to start.
Yeah, because the weather is usually great this time of year. There's a lot of supportive people, a lot of community here. There's resources in town, and there's even more resources if you go a bit further to some of the neighboring towns. But it's a great place to start boondocking, and it's a great place for building community with other RVers. But be careful of what group you're going to join. You know, some of the groups get gigantic, and be aware of that when you're making your plans on who you're going to go with.
So we heard that one of the biggest groups here, if probably the biggest group, was the RTR, Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, I think it's called, and they had over maybe closer to 3,000 banners and other RVers coming in for that event. And we didn't go over there to check it out. It would have been really cool to get some drone footage of that, but we just were not willing to brave the crazy heading over there. If that is not your scene, be aware of that. I would say do some research on when you're going. If you're going with a group, what kind of a group is it? How big do they expect it to be? What area are they planning to camp? And what kind of lineup of activities are they going to have? And is that going to be in alignment with the kind of things that are interesting to you? Because, I heard that one with all the RTR group. Like I said, we didn't get to experience it firsthand ourselves, but we heard that one got pretty big and crazy and out there.
Yeah. And a lot of people do come out here to be a part of a group, and whether that's an owner's group for the kind of RV that you have, or a larger organization like Escapees or Escapers, which that's who we're camping with this year and last year. But there's going to be a big organizations and smaller organizations. People like to camp together and have some commonality. Those owner groups are great to park together because you have a lot of common interest in the same RV and might be able to have some knowledge that only people from the same RV brand might have. And then some of the other organizations, you just might have other things in common. Make sure you're paying attention to the access of where you're going to try and park your RV. One of the reasons Quartzsite is so popular is because it's got big flat areas and the ground has a stone type surface on top of the dirt, which makes it good for supporting a lot of RVs. But some of the dirt still can be soft, so make sure you're careful with not parking on really soft dirt with your big RVs. And also, if you have an opportunity to separate your tow car from a motorhome, for example, it'd be a good idea to scope the area with your car first. If you're towing a trailer, you might need to stay connected, of course.
Maybe you can scope it out with a bicycle or just biking.
Or, maybe you were in a campground the night before to replenish your things before boondocking. You can scope it with your truck before you take the trailer out there. That's part of the reason why this area is so popular, is because the ground surface is usually pretty good for that. That said, that rocky surface is good for keeping some of the dust down, but especially by the end of the couple weeks when there's so many RVs here, the dust gets higher and higher, and you're gonna have to be aware of that.
Right, so keep an eye on your windows and your awnings. The wind can pick up around here. Keeping a patio mat out the front of your RV is really going to help keep some of the dust and dirt down, but definitely not if you're expecting to have a nice clean experience in Quartzsite. You're going to want to go check into a campground. If you're going to be out in the desert, it might seem obvious, but you know, unless you've really experienced it, it can be hard for a lot of people who don't enjoy having dirt and dust tracked into their RV, especially if you've got some nice higher end RVs and you just don't want that. Then fine, stay in a campground or in one of the, you know, further out areas where it's maybe got an asphalt parking area. So even though there are a lot of RVs around, a lot of people around, it's still a good idea to keep your things locked up. We wouldn't recommend leaving things like generators and solar panels or any other valuables outside of the RV unattended, unless they're you're with a group that is keeping an eye on it for you. We have heard stories of people having items removed, unauthorized removal of their things here in Quartzsite, so that's just definitely something to keep an eye on at all times, but especially in Quartzsite we hear that can be a bit prevalent sometimes. So if you're planning to go down and check out the big tent, which most people do if they're in town for that, try and avoid going on the first day. I think a lot of people like to go early the first day thinking they're going to avoid the crowds, but for at least from what we've heard from people that we know that have done it, they end up actually copping the peak crowds. You know, see if you can delay at least a day going in to visit it, or maybe even one of the days during the week, but that first day is always the most crowded. Typically we find people either love Quartzsite or they hate it, and a lot of that is to do with managing expectations, knowing what to expect, how to plan, and you know, just what are your preferences and what are your tastes. So we hope that some of the tips in this video will help you make the most of your time in Quartzsite, because it is something that is definitely worth seeing at least once if you get a chance, and more often if you like it. So thanks for watching, and thanks to everyone for contributing to this video. If you've got any tips of your own about how to survive Quartzsite, put them down in the comments below, because that's going to be helpful for everyone watching and reading. Of course, if you like the video, like it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it if you think it's going to be useful to anyone else.
So I guess that about wraps it up. So until next time, we'll see you on the road.